Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Logical Magic, Examining Esoterica. Hey, guys, today I have a guest for you named Royce Morales, and she is someone who works with helping us release fear through past life work and also through self-integration. So she does work with this lifetime and she does work with previous lifetimes. Her website is The Perfect Life Awakening. She works with spiritual cognition integration, and she has a bi-weekly podcast called The Perfect Life Awakening Show. And she's got a lot of experience in being a teacher and a guide for people as they try to resolve their own issues, particularly as it pertains to fear. Fear is one of the things that holds us back more than almost anything. People wonder what the opposite energy of love is. It is not. It is not hate, it is actually fear. And so overcoming fear is one of the things, one of the hurdles we all must clear on a spiritual journey to be integrated with our highest self, to find our life's purpose and to travel forward. Now, if you've been around for a little while here, you know that I don't think that anybody has anyone's all the answers. But I do believe that everybody I have here has valid answers for someone who needs to hear them. We can have diverging paths, and different teachers can have a part of your puzzle as well. So it's always worth looking into areas that perhaps you haven't been called to before, because it may contain something that you need to bring into being the life that you truly were meant to lead. So today we're talking to Royce, but let's get the housekeeping out of the way, because I'm supposed to put it at the top of the podcast and not at the bottom. I'm Alane. You can find me at therisingmoon.com to book me for a tarot card reading or a life coaching session. You can always find me on YouTube at Cronecast at The Rising Moon, and that's where the video versions of these interviews go up as well. And then you can always find me here at Logical Magic, Examining Esoterica. And I have a Patreon. It will be linked in the episode notes or in the description box on the video version as well. Hello, Royce. How are you today?
Hi, I'm great. Great. How are you?
I'm doing so well. I'm so glad to be talking to you about the type of work
Too.
that you do. I really believe that past life work has a real role in understanding, because we think about, when we talk to people about what they think they've been in another life, everybody wants to think they were like Cleopatra or somebody really important.
Cleopatra. Yeah,
But
thousands of Cleopatras.
exactly.
Yes.
She was cloned a lot, apparently. But what really our past lives do is we carry our lessons forward, the things that we're trying to overcome. And doing past life work can help you understand some of the things that, like anxiety, is one of the fear-based responses that so many people worry about. And it usually has to do with the fight for survival that was really a part of our lives previous to this. And like, does everybody have, are you always the exact same person? From what I understand, not exactly. There is the collective consciousness. You can take energies from different lives as well, which is why sometimes you'll go to one regressionist and they'll tell you you were this, that, and the other. You go to another regressionist and they'll tell you, no, you were this, that, and the other. Both are true. Both are true.
Yes.
You contain the elements and the energies of people who have been before. We are all one, which means that we are comprised of more than just our individual self, and that we are trying to resolve some energies, not just for ourselves, but for the universal collective, to improve this world and make it the best that it can be. So, Royce,
Yes.
that was our big introduction. Will you tell me a little bit about how you came to this work, please?
Well, it's actually something I never in a million years would think that I would ever be doing. I arrived here with questions, just burning questions. At the age of 4, I would ask my mom these deep questions, and she'd kind of, scratch her head and go, I don't know, or she'd make something up, and it was never satisfying. And so once I was able to read and get deeper into things, I started a lifelong quest to find answers. And I religion hopped, and I philosophy hopped, and I personal training hopped, and did anything that I possibly could. And I found that I always felt like, wow, that was interesting, but it didn't really get to the soul of what I needed. I would take a personal development course, and I'd drive home and I would still be flipping people off on the freeway and yelling at my husband and my child when I would get home. So there was something off about it. And I actually was trained to be a channeler. I was in a channeling class, and the teacher she needed a night off or something, and she called me up and said, would you mind taking the class for the evening? And I said, sure. And so I sat in this room with a bunch of people, and at the end of the evening, one of them came up to me and said, you seem to know a lot of stuff. Would you consider teaching me? And I literally in my head was thinking, this woman is crazy. I don't know anything. What is she talking about? But out of my mouth came, sure, I'd love to bring your friends. And so it was my first experience of having just such intuitive guidance just lead me to answer her. And she arrived a few weeks later with 10 of her friends in my living room. And I sat there and I stuttered and stammered and didn't know what the hell I was talking about, but everybody loved it. They came back and brought their friends, and it just kind of snowballed from there. And in the process of doing that, I basically was teaching them all the things that I had learned in my entire life. And one night, one of my students looked at me and said, well, that's all well and good, and I like that spiritual stuff, but how do you really get there? How does that happen? And so I said, well, here's how. And I pulled in one of my students from the audience, and I had her close her eyes, and I was intuitively given this inner process to do on her. And I took her back, and she located a past life and resolved some things that had been inhibiting her in this life, some fears that she had carried that were programmed into her subconsciously. And afterwards, she was in tears and she said, oh my God, my entire life just changed. Everybody applauded. And from that point on, I've been doing basically the same process with people, kind of expanding it and getting more detailed with it, but having just monumental, incredible results with people to resolve and release the specific origins of some of the stuff that we've carried with us, as you were saying, from past lives. So that's my story in a nutshell. And I've been doing it for over 40 years.
I do a form of past life regression tarot reading that focuses on the same sort of thing, and it is amazing how transformative it can be simply for someone to learn that a fear that they've had is an energy that they're carrying forward.
Yes.
One with a client that I worked with, her cards revealed that she had had a lifetime in which she died from an earthquake, and it was like sort of a like pre-science sort of lifetime, so there was very little understanding of what was causing things like earthquake. And by very little, I mean absolutely none. And so she had this kind of primal fear within her about earthquakes. And as soon as I spotted it in the crowds, in the cards, she started crying because she had been terrified of earthquakes her entire life. And it made no sense to her because she didn't even live in an earthquake region in this particular lifetime. So these are the type of things that the type of work that Royce is talking about can help us understand. We are always, as we try to understand others first to aid our path, what we really find is that a better understanding of self will help us be informed by our own intuition and our own guidance within the moment. And one of the things that you're referring to is when you found that you had abilities you didn't even know and you were being led to be a particular type of guide. That's often called a crossroads guide. And you will meet a crossroads guide at a point in your life in which your life's purpose there's an opening for it. There's basically a path that you can start taking towards your evolution, towards your better understanding of self and others. And crossroad guides, like many of the people that I have on here, are the people who give you the information that help you to continue on your path to your next path divergence, in which you may meet a different guide, you may go back to the same guide. But that's what many of the teachers who are here are performing, is the act of being a crossroads guide, because our fateful path is filled with crossroads. And remember, fate does not come with a timestamp on it. It comes with an energetic readiness. And so when you are ready to receive the answers that will get you towards the next, kind of guidepost in your life, you will meet the teachers. You will be drawn towards the teachers as well. How has your teachings, the things that you have learned, what has it done within your own life?
Oh my gosh. I was just thinking about that the other
A
day.
little question, just a little small one. It's a giant, giant question. I'm very, very.
Really, I couldn't even begin to tell you what it's done for me. Like I said, I never imagined myself doing what I'm doing. I was the kind of person in school that would sit there cowering if the teacher asked a question. I never once raised my hand in, 24 years of education. And now I talk to strangers, I talk to people on podcasts, I have my own podcast. That's just one of the things that happened. I think there's a what I refer to with my students is I call it a deservingness level. There's a part of us that's always thinking, oh, I don't deserve that. Don't manifest, please, universe. We send out those thoughts all the time. And of course, the universe is a yes machine and it says, oh, you don't deserve. Okay, fine. Here's, what you don't deserve. And I find that because of the work that I've done on myself, which by the way, I do as much work on myself as I do with my students. I feel like that's just as important. Because of that work, I know that my deservingness level has skyrocketed. And my intuition, of course, has skyrocketed. And I trust myself and I trust other people. I could just give you, 1,000 different things that have happened. I know that probably the biggest thing that happened for me is feeling deserving of love. I talk a lot about how, like you said in the beginning, the opposite of fear is love. And I look back on my life and I know that for 30, 40 years of my life, I did not deserve to be loved. I believed that I didn't deserve to be loved. And when I shifted that and when I released what was really in the way of all that, which is subconscious programming, fear-based programming, I was able to allow love to enter my life. And now I've been married for 38 years to a person that I absolutely know that I deserve to be with. So there's that kind of thing. And again, it's an endless list. It really is.
It can really transform how you feel about the world, the exterior world and the external world around you
Yes.
as well, because you have more confidence in your ability to be guided towards the right answers for you. And sometimes
Yes.
challenges are brought to us, and we do learn the most about what we're still working on through our challenges. So
Yes.
things are brought to us that are seemingly difficult in the moment, but help reveal something about our core nature, about the
Always.
wounds that we're carrying. And sometimes we will live lifetimes that will reinforce the energies that we are carrying forward to try and almost shine a flashlight into that area of our
Yes.
subconscious so that we can focus on it. So
Yes.
the thing that you're most afraid of is usually the thing that contains a truth about you. And the type of
Yes.
work that Royce does helps you look at those truths so that you can have a more informed and a more confident path going forward. And you
Yeah.
said something that I think is super important for people to understand, which is if you were an introvert, if you were the type of person who was like, oh, please God, don't look at me, because same thing here. I was very bullied, but like, I was also just like, I would shrink from any form of attention or contact, as most abuse survivors will. Often that is the template for what makes a real leader, because you stand outside of the conforming structures. You don't spend the rest of your life seeking inclusion within the conforming structures. And when you're not seeking inclusion within conforming structures, it does mean that you can find a path that can be a revelation for yourself and for others. And so people like Royce, who is a spiritual teacher to help people understand themselves, can have answers that will then give you not simply the idea of being mentored by somebody for the rest of your life, but rather discovering how you can mentor yourself towards your greatest expression of the gifts that you possess, for we all possess divine
Yeah.
gifts.
Yeah.
So, Royce, can you tell me about some of the specific work that you do and what it has done for some of your clients?
Oh, another tough question.
I don't lob softballs very often. And like, there's something I want the audience to understand. My guests are amazing because I tell them beforehand, listen, I like it to be an organic conversation. So I do not give them question sets.
Yes.
And that is so that the conversation contains a better flow for what people would naturally be asking. But it
Yes.
does really put people on the spot. And I'm always amazed by how well everybody does. So with that in mind, giant not softball lobbed your way. Royce, can you give me some examples of what you're
Sure.
working?
And that's great because I'm the same way in my podcast. I always warn people I'm organic. I use the same word. Um, I could give thousands of examples. Again, doing this for 40 years, I have some pretty amazing results. But I want to step back to something that you were saying before, because it kind of explains a little bit about why this stuff works and what happens in our life to get us to remember, to get us to get in touch with what we're in denial of. And I call it mirroring. And the way that I explain mirroring, if you can imagine a seesaw, and everything is energy. So if I'm pushing something down, let's say I'm pushing down my anger, that anger has to come up somewhere. And the anger that I'm pushing down could be from a past life. It could be from something that happened when I was 2 years old. And we have learned ways to suppress ourselves and to be in denial. And what the universe in its brilliance does for us is that it shows us by being the other side of that seesaw. It says, oh, you're pushing down your anger. You really need to look at it. So here's a really angry person to be married to so that you can get in touch with your own anger. And it's never wrong. The universe is always right. It always brings the perfect catalyst or the perfect other side of the mirror, the seesaw, for us to wake up to what we're in denial of. So the work that I do helps people remember that, oh, that's why I married that guy that was so angry. Oh, I get it. And when people get in touch with and release whatever it is they're suppressing, the seesaw goes like that and normalizes, and the person on the opposite side that was acting on your anger doesn't have to do that anymore because you've released that need. So it's really remarkable. So examples, let's see. One that immediately comes to mind is I worked with a young man who started his own business and was wildly successful. And one day, all of a sudden, it sort of dried up. He wasn't getting any phone calls from clients, and nobody was, clicking on his website. And he did a little bit of research, and he found that there was another person that was ripping off, literally word for word, the information from his website and taking all his clients. And so we worked together and discovered what was being mirrored to him, and he released it, and he was done with the process that we did. And literally within minutes, his phone was ringing off the hook. The person stopped stealing his information, and his business was able to flourish again. And it can be as fast as that. And it never ceases to amaze me how working on your side does something out in the universe and it gets reflected back. I've had people deal with their addictions and realize what they were all about and release them. And suddenly they're no longer craving whatever it was they were addicted to. Um, I mean, it's just endless, the amount of things that happen. I hope that answers your question.
It does. I work very extensively with people with complex post-traumatic stress disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder. And one of the ways to kind of crystallize what we're talking about here is that CPTSD survivors and PTSD survivors dealing with formative damage or childhood wounds frequently will manifest in their partners the ability to resolve the issues from childhood. So if you had somebody who treated you like a burden, as a for instance, because the reality of the situation is that some people who should not be parents end up having children, and so that they can treat their children like they are an affliction or a burden. And when you grow up, you may in fact choose partners that will echo that energy signature until you claim your own power, until you treat yourself as being valuable, until you treat yourself as having worth. And will you always manifest your fears? You'll always manifest your lessons. Remember, life is not happening to you, life is happening for you. It's just that some of the things that we're being asked to look at contain more jagged wounds within than others. But the point of it happening is always to help us understand ourselves and the role that we have within this world. Royce, what do you, because you've been curious since the time you were tiny, I can't really ask you one of the standard questions, which is what's the difference from your life before and after? But how do you see this as somebody who is still connected? How are your lessons brought to you now? Because we never stop learning, guys. We never really graduate. So what lessons are brought to you, and how does the work that you do help you understand yourself as well? Because as teachers, we're always learning about ourselves too.
Well, probably the biggest lesson that was brought to me a few years ago was my wonderful husband had a very, very unexpected, massive stroke, and he survived it. But I immediately started looking at, okay, so why did I need to have a husband that had a stroke? What is that about for me? And I mean, I can just tell you that everything in my life changed. We, had to close our businesses, sell our house. We moved up to the mountains. I mean, everything ended up being absolutely miraculous in terms of what it created, because now I'm able to do my work remotely, etc. Um, but I also got to look at, what was that really about? What was that showing me about my lack of deservingness, which I was mentioning before? So I did a lot of work on that, and I got to see that it was something that was given to me because I needed to assist him. He's always been the one that's been assisting me, and we're talking several hundred lifetimes of that role for him. And it was time for me to assist him in this lifetime to clean all of that up. That's just one example of what it was, but it was all about deserving to really, I don't know, accept my role as a healer and accept my role as somebody that really cares. I always thought that I cared, but I didn't realize what it meant to be a caregiver. So that was a huge lesson for me. And again, it was about cleaning up things that karmically I had brought with me. And that's something I talk a lot about in my classes. I don't, it's the cause and effect cycle of life. There's no effect without a prior cause. And I talk about that in terms of, why am I going through this? What is it that I did in a past life that would have set this up? So, that's what I've been exploring for the last few years as I am his caregiver. And it's a real interesting process. It really is. It's brought up so many things for me.
One
So,
one of the things that Jacob and I talked about in the karma podcast that we did was to reframe the idea of how you look at karma to better understand it, which stop thinking of karma as rewards or punishments and start looking at them as lessons. And when we're talking about the lesson of being deserving, at the root of that is a phrase that we hear repeated over and over within the spirituality community, but it's not defined very well. And it's usually for people who are looking for external relationships. They're told you have to love yourself first. And it makes them like it's not well worded. It makes people sound like they're personing wrong or something, and that is not what it's about. It is that when you learn to approach yourself with love, kindness, compassion, and understanding, that is the only treatment that you will accept from another as well.
yes.
And so one of the things that you would have to, what you're talking about, one of the lessons I would perceive with your husband is that whereas you were prepared to be the guide and the nurturing force for your students, that was on a macro level and you had to learn to take it on a micro level to, again, enhance your ability to receive universal love or be deserving of love. And so
Yes.
that is the crystallization of the idea of you have to love yourself first. You have to know yourself to love yourself. You have to be compassionate with yourself to love yourself. You have to stop judging yourself in order to learn the lessons, to have the evolution, to have the expansion, to have the life that you want coming to you.
Yeah, and part of that also, in terms of karma, is remembering what it was that you did first and forgiving yourself for that, which is sometimes a really difficult task, especially when you're looking at 100 lifetimes and you realize, oh my God, I did that and I did that and I did that, but it starts to make sense that I did that, but then the next lifetime I received equal negativity to sort of help balance that out. But I didn't see it that way. I saw it as, oh, that's terrible that that happened to me. So shifting our perspective to see things as amazing gifts from the universe to help us clean this stuff up that we're carrying around subconsciously. I just have to tell you my definition of karma. I give hours and hours of information about karma, but this is what all my students remember. This is my definition of karma. Karma is like taking a piece of bubble gum that you've chewed, throwing it on the ground, turning around, stepping in it, and getting pissed off at the jerk that threw that gum on the ground. So we forget what we've done first, and then we get pissed off at the results that we attract. So that's my definition.
People get stuck in the why phase in understanding of self. Why did this have to happen? Why did that have to happen to me? Why did the why? And it's a normal phase. Don't like begrudge yourself that phase because it is when you begin to question. But on the other side of that, when you accept that it's like there is a reason, that like, why? Well, there are energetic signatures that I'm carrying forward. And then why anybody? That is one of the things I will always like underline for people is please remember we are not handed suffering on a level of it's just part of being a feeling being. It's not a judgment. It is a call to look within to understand the true source of our pain so that we can address it, so that we can heal it, so that we
Yes.
can move forward without
Yeah.
it as well.
It's a wake
Forgiveness of
call.
self is one of the most healing things as well. And it's one of the biggest challenges, particularly for people who identify as women in this society. We are taught to be so ashamed of any of our like our temper or desires or like anything that sets us out of being anything other than a people pleaser. And so women in patriarchal societies face an even bigger hurdle than some of our male counterparts or people who identify as men, is that we are always battling with societally ingrained shame over the concept of being a woman and being told that we are in some way lesser. And so that is another part of what we're being asked to confront and heal is you can't fix the macro, but you can fix the micro so that you can learn how to approach yourself as being deserving, as knowing that you are as worthy of power as anybody else that you meet, and that you do have an obligation to self and to others to use that power responsibly. And teachers like Royce help connect people to their personal power so that they can then perform their purposeful tasks within this world. And so it all kind of meshes together. Um, and
And just
one
to
of
add on to the
go ahead.
micro, I'm sorry, the micro and the macro, I find that the more of us that do the micro, it's spreading energetically so that the macro does get affected. The 100th monkey theory, which I always talk about,
Or the butterfly flaps its wings, be a
butterfly.
butterfly.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's why it's so important even to do just a little bit of transformational work on yourself because it affects your family, it affects your children, it affects the community, it affects the world. So yeah.
Change one thing and you begin the process and the work of changing the world entire is part of
Yes.
what goes on with that is the idea that our energy ripples forward as well. That if you improve and maximize and optimize what is going on within you, your understanding of self and again others, that everything that you do, there used to be a shampoo commercial in Royce, you might remember it. A lot of people who are a little bit younger or not, but it was like a VO5 or something commercial where somebody had this wonderful shampoo and they're like, and you tell two friends and they tell two friends and they tell two friends. And on the screen was this ever multiplying number of people because it starts with one person and then it carries forward. And energetic healing is like that as well, particularly within generational lines. If you begin to resolve the karma or the energy that has been following your ancestral line, it improves not just your life, but everybody who's connected to you because of that ripple, because of the pebble in the lake rippling outwards type of thing.
Yes. Yeah.
Royce, one of the things that we have to accept on a spiritual journey is that we have never arrived in our final version. What do you see for yourself going forward with the work that you're doing? Do you have any inklings? Because your life changed when your husband had a stroke, and I'm so sorry because that is a difficult challenge. But it sounds like beautiful things grew from that. What do
Yes.
you think your next chapters contain, or are you just on a wait and see type of program?
I am totally committed to getting the word out there to a lot more people. I'm in the process of trying to get a book published by a major publisher. I wrote 3 books that I self-published, and self-publishing doesn't really get you too far. So, I've got some book proposals out there, and that's my goal. I want people on, I don't want to say a massive level, but a more, I don't know, inclusive level to understand this stuff, even just basically, because I find that some of my students get it deeply, some of them get it on a superficial level, and it still changes lives because your way of perceiving yourself and others completely changes when you understand mirrors. It's like you can't hate that person anymore because you instantly look at the mirror of what they're showing you. So you make different choices. Even if you don't do deep inner work like I do with most of my students, even if you just get it on that level, things will change. All of a sudden it's like, oh, we don't really have to go to war. okay, we get to look at mirrors instead. Okay, so things will shift. So that's my goal.
It genuinely it can make an entire difference in the trajectory of the world. And I'm going to use an
Yes.
example to help people understand that about how one small thing can change the world entire. Now, this is a negative example, okay, but it applies to every positive thing as well. We've all heard of Rasputin, sometimes referred to as the Mad Monk, who was someone who the Tsarina, became very attached to trying to heal her son, the crown prince Alexia, and he had hemophilia. And Rasputin was a spiritual healer. Now, he changed the entire map of the world in a way that still affects you to this moment and to this day, because the Tsar's family's focus on Rasputin was one of the matches to the powder keg of the societal imbalance within Russia, and it led to the Red Revolution, which then shaped the map going forward. And part of the reason that Hitler lost was that he got caught up on the Russian front. So, what Rasputin did in that becoming a spiritual leader for the Tsarina, even though her family did end up perishing, it was that ripple in the pond. And it was something that transformed the entire world. Don't ever discount the idea that what you do can have a massive impact. Even if you can't see it from where you're standing, as you go forward into a greater understanding of self and others and play an important and informed role in your own trajectory going forward, the changes can be massive, and our intent establishes so many things. If you go forward with good intent, part of the flaw of Rasputin was he was a very conflicted man who had a lot of vices. He was not a pure spiritual being. We can try to be the purest form of ourselves. Intent carries forward with the energy that then grows and grows and grows and grows.
Mm.
So it is always important. And our next evolution will always come to us. And I
Right.
just wondered if you had an inkling of what it might be yet or not, but where you're never, don't ever look at your life as being in a steady and fixed state. For part of the idea of evolution is the concept that we are constantly growing, which means constant change. And if
Yeah.
you take nothing away from any of the spiritual podcasts that you listen to, embrace change. It is the
Yes.
only way for things to get better in your
Yeah.
life, in the lives of others, in the world around us. Change has to be something that we make besties with in order to affect the change in this world that will bring about the things that we're talking about. Like, we don't need to go to war. When
Right.
we're talking about that energetic balance, when we've mastered it within, when you put your monster on a leash and make it do what you want rather than being at the whim of it, your power increases and it is felt within this world. And what you do within this world does return to you as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Well,
Royce, can you
that's
tell me anything about your own past lives? Because we've been talking a little bit about it, but we haven't touched on what you've discovered in your own life.
ah again a big question. Can I go back for 1 second when you were
Absolutely, absolutely.
using the word intention? And that's something I talk a lot about with my students because we have a lot of subconscious intention going on. So I could be saying, I am, phrasing it in an affirmation. I am winning the lottery. Let's say that's what we decide that we want to do. And but if our intention is I never want to win the lottery because that would mean I get so much money and I don't deserve money and that would just change my life and I really don't want my life to change. Whatever the intention is behind what we're asking for is what manifests. So that's a really important point for people to understand. And once you get in touch with your true intention, that's when things can shift. Like the person that his business shifted completely because he realized what his intention really was, which was to have his business fail. And he got in touch with that and realized, oh God, I really don't want that. And that's because of some past life that I decided I don't deserve to be successful. So there's that kind of thing that happens, which shifts our intention, which shifts everything out in the universe. So back to your question about my past lives. In one of my books, I go into a lot of detail about my past lives because I had a very profound experience when I met my soulmate in this life. And out of that experience, I literally had to do a lot of inner work because I found that it was very scary to meet this man in my life that I knew absolutely was my soulmate. And I was very happily married at that time. So I did a lot of past life work. I remembered a lifetime being a Native American. I was always very drawn to Native American things as a child. You would find me in the library reading every book about American Indians that I could get my hands on. So I've been in touch with that. I've been in touch with, and this might get a little woo-woo, but I've been in touch with the origins of my arrival here from another realm, and saw what it was about and why I came here. And I brought a bunch of other people with me, and all the things I was supposed to do once I got here. Um, Gosh, I could just go on and on. And there were some very negative lifetimes as well, where I did some horrendous things, and I'm still cleaning those up in this life. So is that enough?
Oh, yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
It's always fascinating for people to understand that um it's just that self-judgment is one of the biggest barriers to self-understanding.
Yes.
So when you're talking about lifetimes that you had where it's like, oh my gosh, I was a horrific person, I was a crusader, I chopped people's heads off, whatever it might be, is release the idea that you need to judge the action from who you are now and understand what the energy you're carrying forward from that is and how to resolve it. And to kind of step outside the idea of making it a value judgment and rather making it something that informs, again, your self-understanding. And sometimes there's like something a little bit more that goes into intent, which is if you've been trying to manifest something, you've been trying to manifest something. And if we want to use the lottery example, awesome, let's use the lottery example. But it doesn't come to you and it doesn't come to you and it doesn't come to you. It is not always that you are blocking it because you don't believe that you deserve. It is sometimes that as you progress, as you become more in touch with your own spiritual energy and your own power, it will have less meaning to you.
Yes.
Meaning that it is something that you're actually going to outgrow. The
Yeah.
idea that you don't know it from the point in time that you're trying to manifest it.
Right.
So always look to the idea that there is a reason that something isn't coming to you, and there is
Yes.
a reason that the things that are coming to you are coming to you. And
Yeah.
always look at them as lessons, again, to give you a better understanding of yourself, because you do not truly need to understand the world around you if you understand your place within it, your own strengths and weaknesses, how to take care of them, and how to have the most meaningful experience that you can here. Royce, like, what do you do for people? How can they find you? Can you give me a little idea of, I know you work with people on one, and I know you work with them in group sessions as well. And so
Yes.
could you give me a little bit of an example of the type of work that you do with people, please?
Well, the classes are, gosh, they're so powerful. There's a lot of informational level in the classes, but what I think the value of the classes is the inner work that we do. At the end of each informational session, we do a guided meditation, which is more of an inner process. I don't tell people what direction to go. I just leave it open for them, but I guide them into a meditative state and ask some questions so that they can get in touch with the origins of where they decided that they don't deserve, or where that negative fear-based programming came from, so that they can release it. Um, it's a very intense experience. It's not for somebody that wants to sit around and talk spirituality and learn how to do affirmations. It goes much deeper than that. And the inner work that I do privately with people is basically that as well, except it's done one-on-one. I do find, I used to say that I would work with people individually without them taking my courses, but I find that it works a lot better if they at least have a basic understanding of what they're striving for. Um, so the classes are, they used to be 20 weeks, now they're 6 weeks, and it gives a real, very deep informational level of what to look for in the inner work, and it helps to open people up. They're very supportive and loving, they're open, there's sharing, there's individual questions. Interestingly enough, in all the years I've been doing this, there's never a coincidence as to who gets drawn to a particular group. I've had groups that everybody found out slowly as the group evolved that everybody had an alcoholic parent, or everybody was abused as a child, or everybody has the same issue going on. It's really interesting to see that. So there's a lot of bonding that goes on in the group. And that's pretty much what I do. Yeah, that's in a nutshell what I do.
One of the things that you pointed out is so important that we need to delve into it just a little bit more deeply. And that is that this is not a comfortable process.
Right.
Discomfort is, this is just a truth, and it is a universal truth to
Yes.
accept, which is that your evolution and your growth lies outside of your comfort zone by definition. If you're going
Yes.
to grow, it is outside of your comfort zone. And in order for things to get better, you need to grow. And
Yeah.
you have to make a little bit of peace with the idea that this is not an easy path. It can be a difficult one. It can be a challenging one. You can dig into old pain and end up sobbing nonstop for weeks at a time in order to resolve it, to understand it, to unburden yourself of that energy and transmute it into something more positive.
Yes.
But it is not, when we're talking, you said you're like, it's not for the people who want to sit around and talk about like the more fluffier aspects of a
Fluffy. That's a good
spiritual
word.
journey, right? Like it's like, I'll just put it because this is the nitty gritty and it can
It
be in
is.
fact hard work.
Yeah.
And it can actually involve a lot of uncomfortable emotions. But the point of learning to coexist with them is that they will no longer control you as you learn to understand them. When you learn to
Yes.
understand them, they have a lot less power over the trajectory, the path of your life, meaning they
Yeah.
don't stand in your way. Instead, they inform you about where you are and what you're working on. So there is a
Yes.
point in it. It's not psychotherapy where people go into like the whole Freudian thing. It's almost a little pointless because it's a little navel gazy and it's like, oh, this pain and it did this, that to me. And it's like, and now what? And
Now what?
this,
Exactly.
the spiritual journey gives you the,
Spiritual
and now
journey.
what?
Yes. I tell people when they sign up for my classes, you're going to be given two tools. The first one is a shovel, and the second one is a mirror. And that's all you need in life.
Third one is going to be a great big hanky to dry your tears sometimes.
Right. Yeah, that too. That too. Yes.
Royce, it's been lovely talking to you. Thank you so much for taking your time here
You.
today. Will you please tell me again where people can find you?
My website is Perfect Life Awakening. And if you just remember my name, it's roycemorales.com. My podcast is on Times Media on Wednesdays, every other Wednesday of the month. Um, and all the information for my next course that I am intending to start on Sunday, February 26th, is all the information is on my website, Perfect Life Awakening. And so
Awesome.
I hope some of your listeners and viewers sign up because I'd love to have
I
you.
hope so too. Remember, when you go looking for yourself, you actually find your place within this world as well. All right, guys, that has been Royce Morales talking about the role of uncovering what truly motivates us both within this lifetime and from past lifetimes. I'm Alane. You can always find me at therisingmoon.com. You can book me for a tarot card reading or a live coaching session. You can only do it through my website. Like every spiritual worker, we have people trying to impersonate us. So if you see somebody in a comment section trying to sell you something, that is never going to be the real person. And then you can also find me here at Logical Magic Examining Esoterica. Check out my Patreon for Monday through Friday spiritual advice. There's a link to that in the episode notes or the description box of the video. And then as again, Chromecast at the Rising Moon, if you're looking for the video version of this. Royce Morales can help you find the things that motivate you from the past and in the present so that you can live the life that you truly deserve in the here and the now. Take care, be well, live magically. Thanks so much for joining me.